Hello and good afternoon. My name is Judd Hendricks, and I'm the Executive Director of Interfaith Paths to Peace. And I want to welcome you to our Wednesday Boardroom Buddhas. This is our 3 o'clock program that we do every Wednesday. And this has been one of the most exciting programs that we put together this summer. And I want to give a big shout out to Ida Turner and Sarah Waske, who are developing the program. And you're not going to want to miss today. In fact, you're going to want to share it on Facebook. Because this is going to be a great panel conversation. So I'm going to turn it over to Ida, and those of you that are joining us on Facebook, you're welcome to add comments in the Facebook, and we'll bring those comments and questions into our conversation. Thanks for being here, and turn it over to you, Ida. Thank you. Ida, I think you're on mute still. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I got too excited. You see, I've been looking forward to my Wednesday Boardroom Buddha conversations. I'm Ida Smith-Turner officially, and I am thrilled to be back again in the company of just very intelligent people. And so I want to say welcome to everybody on Facebook Live, as well as those folks joining us here on the Zoom call. We had good talk today. But first, the concept behind IPP's Boardroom Buddhas. The virtual conversations are focused on raising corporate consciousness. So indeed, very important concept, but it really is to serve the advancement of the effeminate wisdom in the workplace, which essentially means creating an equal playing field in terms of disparity, diversity, and basic human rights in the corporate spaces. Our topic for today is a very pertinent one, which we find tends to get in the way of women's success. It is how our conditioned minds and personal relationships with money tends to get in the way. So we are tackling the taboos around this topic, which is women and money conversations. My co-host, Sarah Waske, is here with me today again. Thanks for joining me again, Sarah. I'm going to leave it to you to talk a little bit about why we are here today and to introduce our panel.
Thank you, Ida, and thank you, Judd. Thank you to IPP for hosting these conversations. I'm Sarah Waske. I'm a CPA, so this is a great conversation for me, and I'm so excited to dive in with these guests. We have 3 amazing women here today. There is such a freedom in breaking old patterns and stories that we tell ourselves, and we are going to disrupt some of those stories today around money. So wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have open conversations about money with no stress, no stories attached, and look at money in a practical way, not as good or evil, but as a tool. No attachment to shame or social status or our self-worth. And today we're going to discuss how women are conditioned to think about money and how that holds us back in our personal and professional lives. So today, to discuss these topics, we have 3 amazing women. We have Liz Kitchell with Shimula. We have Delisha Murray with Fifth Third Bank, and we have Carrie Van Winkle with Natural Investments. So we're going to move straight into questions. And the first question we're going to talk about, we're going to have each panelist introduce themselves, tell a little bit about themselves, and then what led them to their interest in this topic. Why is this topic so important to them? And how are they doing that in their lives? How are they manifesting that in their lives currently? So we're going to start. Liz, let's start with you.
Thank you, Sarah, so much, and Ida for having me. So I'm Liz Kitchell with Shimula. I'm a co-founder, and it's really interesting with regards to women and money. That's really what Shimula is all about. It's bringing the balance to the conversation between the masculine and the feminine, the money, or the physical money. And I came about this because after about 25 years in the financial services industry, I definitely realized that there was a lot more to money. I worked in the investment advisory world where people who had money learned to make more money. And what I wanted to do was kind of take what I knew about money and bring it to the masses, but not just about this logical aspect, but also with regards to experiential side. It's the questions of what is the money for and getting that right. Because people are either really good at the logical side or they're really good at the, experiential side. But I don't want this either or conversation. I want this yes and conversation. And I noticed that what's being taught out there is typically this logical side. And women in money is so important to me because it's that experiential side of money that needs to be brought to the forefront and brought into equality with regards to time and space in the conversation.
Thank you. Delisha.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Delisha Murray, and I am a program officer at Fifth Third Bank. And so I've kind of always been passionate about financial education and women's empowerment. So when I started my career in the nonprofit sector about 20 years ago, I started as a housing counselor, and my job was to educate people that had less resources, less financial resources. I was responsible for educating them on, finances. These are individuals who, come from low incomes and they have a desire to purchase a home. So I had to teach them how to manage their money and their finances. And so at that time, I didn't realize how much of a personal connection I had with many of the individuals that I was teaching. So I could relate to their stories of, being without, coming from a low income family myself growing up. My family didn't have a lot of resources. We didn't have a lot of financial resources, and we didn't talk about money in our house. So as I started my career and then, began to get more into financial education, and then now what I do today at Fifth Third, managing financial education programs primarily for a population that's underserved and that do not have, the necessary resources. It's a personal connection for me. And so it's very important for me because I can identify with this segment of the population. And I believe that financial education is important, and it doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be difficult. And, if you got the right tools and resources in place, then you can learn about money and how to manage your money. So that's kind of, really what led me to, this narrative around, money and the whole concept of changing the narrative. It's personal. And now today what I do is I educate people. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Delisha. And we're going to move on to Carrie. And some of you may recognize Carrie from some of our conversations on the Enneagram and money. So Carrie. Carrie, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Thanks, Sarah and Ida. Thanks for having me as a part of the conversation today. This is also, like Delisha and Liz, this is my work in the world, the connection between women and money. And it's important for me, and what matters about the work that I do is to help women and their loved ones, if they're a part of a couple or in a family dynamic, to help them know how to engage in their money life in a way that is both smart and soulful. And a lot of times I feel like we think it's either one or the other. We've got to be smart and make strategic decisions in our money life, or we are soft and fuzzy and bring our values in our money life in a way that maybe feels like it's not the smartest thing to do. So the work I do in the world is really to bring those together. And I'm an investment advisor. I do socially responsible investing with a firm called Natural Investments. And the other thing I wanted to say about the way I do my work in the world and why it's important is I help women and couples in a very personal way in their money life, create change in their life, in their loved ones' lives, and then we're also connecting their money life to the bigger world and how they want to have a positive impact in the bigger world and where their money has the opportunity to do that.
Okay, ladies. Thank you all for being here. So let's talk about money and why it's such a taboo topic. What is, why do we attach so much shame to money? Why is it so difficult to talk about? What is that root cause or those beliefs that we have? Carrie, let's go backwards now. We'll start with Carrie and work our way back.
What I've seen in my work, and then personally, where shame maybe comes in is I feel like women in particular, you know, a lot of what we're going to talk about, I don't necessarily think is just, it just relates to women. But I really focus my work on women and couples, and the examples, the filter that I look through, the lens that I look through is really women's experience in money. So I'll just put that context out there. But where I see women maybe have challenges with shame or other related feelings about their money life is they really expect a lot of themselves when it comes to money. They expect they should know how to do it. They should be able to do it on their own. They shouldn't need to ask for help. And so they bring a lot of those beliefs and stories to the shoulds of their relationship with money. And when they have other people around them that show them actually you don't have to have all this figured out, you don't have to do this alone, I think that's really a weight that's lifted a lot of times.
Delisha.
Sure. So, you know, I think, you know, it goes back to the saying that people fear what they don't understand. And so for me, when I think about that, I think about what comes along with fear avoidance. And so I feel like in many ways, women tend to want to avoid this whole conversation about money. And then I feel like when you think about like that underserved population I was talking about, it's worse. As it relates to shame, I think that we just live in a society that has taught us to define a person based on their financial status, right? So in many ways, we attach the concept of money to a person's value. And so when you think about a person that is without those resources, you might feel ashamed. So, you know, because of the way that our society has like just, you know, we're defined by our financial status. Our power is defined by, you know, our financial resources or lack of, or, you know, if we have it. So for me, I just feel like, you know, in many ways that shame, you know, it really comes from, you know, really being defined by what society has defined us as, you know, regarding our financial state.
Thank you. Liz, do you have something to add to that?
You know, I do actually. I understand shame to be an emotion of separation. So when you feel separated from, not worthy as part of a community or group. So I'm going to give you a little history on how I think of the background of money and where shame might come in. So historically speaking, you know, men and a handful of men, a few men, invented the rules around money. And they did this in boardrooms, locker rooms, etc., on the golf courses. And it wasn't until recently that it's really become like a public conversation. Over time, like Delisha was saying, it's become this measurement of success. And, you know, and it's also when you think about a measurement of success, people think about, you know, maybe how smart I am. It's also a measurement of how smart I am. But the issue for many of us is we are smart. We should be able to figure this out, right? But we can't always figure it out. We haven't always figured it out, which leads a little bit to that separation, which can lead to shame. And part of it is, I think that people are thinking, at Shimula, this is what we believe, that there are two sides of money. There's this logical side and this experiential side. And the experiential side is what the money is for. It's the values. It's exactly what Carrie does, you know, when she helps people with investment strategies, right? So what's the money for? And that is the part that is sometimes brought forward in the conversation and not necessarily of equal value to the logical side. And that's where I feel like some of the shame comes from, because we think we're smart, we know we're smart, but how come we haven't figured this out, right? It's because we weren't necessarily invited into those boardrooms, and now we are able to have public conversations and get over this.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And just wanted to add, if you guys have any questions for the panelists, go ahead and add those to the chat. and we will have a question and answer session at the end so you can ask those questions. So let's move in.
No, I'm going to jump in here, Sarah.
Okay.
I want to spice things up here a little bit. It's too clinical, one. And I know we're talking about money and it's a very serious topic, right? But let's go a little deeper. Let's pull the surface off a little bit more. Let's scratch. Because that's really the reason I personally wanted to have this panel here and this topic being addressed is our personal relationship as women with money. I mean, in our description of this event, we threw a few taboos out there. We said, typical taboo things women tend to tell themselves when it comes to this topic of money, right? I am no good with money, okay? Let's look at where you got that piece of information from, okay? Men are better with money. Money is for the greedy. I'm an artist. Money is not that important to me, right? And so, yes, I'm all of those things. I'm speaking for Ida right now. All of those things in terms of my personal relationship with money. I'm also an Enneagram 9. And so we know that Enneagram 9 types don't like confrontational topics, which when you talk about negotiation for your salary, when you talk about asking for sponsorships because it's part of your job description, if you talk about negotiating your benefits or asking for that raise at work, this is where these things come into play. And if we can't address that topic on that level with ourselves, then you can throw the book at me. All the intellectual knowledge is not going to get me there, right? So I want to take it a little bit deeper in terms of where women come from. Like we were born into this male-dominated world. It's the world of yang. It's the world of busy and active and competition, and the fittest win and the strongest, right, get there first. So having stepped into corporate spaces, workspaces where we started earning incomes, right, we were so pleased just to get in the door. We were so grateful as women to get the opportunity because that's who we are. Right, that we, when it comes to the money talk, that's just going to cause conflict as long as I get the opportunity to prove myself, right? So we've been walking that walk for a while, but I think it's about time where we address the other part of this equation, is how we are not just tolerated, but appreciated as women. I know I'm going off on a tangent, but that's because this is a very, very, very important topic. And I really want to go deep. So I'm going to throw this out there. Tell me from our panelists, what up for you as I'm talking? Just jump in and do it. Whoever, go for it.
Ida, I wanted to add, thanks for going through some of the taboos, and I wanted to add another one that I think really applies to possibly this panel and, you know, being connected with Interfaith Paths of Peace, which is I can't be spiritual and care about money.
Oh yeah, that's another good one.
Yeah, and I think we can use that as a really strong self-judgment and a way to keep money at a distance or to abdicate the power of money in our life to someone else.
Yes, yes. So let's now talk about we here now. And we can go back in the past and try and go through that muck to figure out where we went wrong. There's no wrong, right? We're here now. So here now, I'm a woman, I'm out here in workspaces. What would you say, each one of you panelists, what advice would you give somebody? What's like my first to do homework, if you will? Conversations that I need to have with myself around this topic to get me started moving into the right direction. Liz, you want to jump in?
Oh, you know, I can talk about this all day long, Ida.
Yeah, we got I've got lots of questions coming in. So yeah. Let's keep it going.
So, you know, if you can notice one or two things, typically we have patterns that happen, and it's a behavior that repeats itself over and over and over again. And it comes to us from some kind of either defense pattern when we were little, and then it becomes a mindset eventually, right? So we have this way of looking at life, whatever that is. And it could have been from a need not being met. There's so many different ways that it can happen. but we created a story that matches this pattern. And we believe it to be true, and that's the way we look through life. So when you're seeing this pattern, you might notice the thought that repeats itself. And it could be anything from, I have to do it alone, or I'm not good with money, or I'm an artist, we're not supposed to be wealthy, I do it because I love it. That's a very dangerous mindset, right? I love what I do, it's not how much I make. That one's pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
So what comes down to is you have to become aware anytime you have anything that you want to change in life. Awareness is the absolute first step. Some people may not hear the actual words that they say to themselves, but what you can do is notice the emotion, or you might be able to notice like a trigger. And then if you, like my go-to emotion when I am in a pattern of playing something out that is a mindset is anger. So, you know, I used to have to go to the anger, process the anger, thank the anger for showing up. And then like whenever the anger dissipates, then I can go and ask the questions. Now I'm at the point where I can get curious when the anger shows up. And the anger is typically motivation for change.
Mm.
And that whatever mindset is showing itself is no longer working for me. And I need to get curious about a way to change it. So that's kind of like what I'm compelled to start talking about.
Yeah.
Based on what you said. Yeah. So just notice the emotion or notice the thought pattern. And then once you notice it, get curious. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to let you guys jump in whenever you just unmute and go for it, okay?
Yeah, I was going to say, along with what Liz was saying, you know, I think that fear also, you know, makes us, you know, it in many ways handicaps us. And so I think, you know, this whole, everything that we're talking about, you know, we can't be afraid. You know, we're women. We know that there are taboos out there. We need to speak up. You know, we need to, you know, embrace where we are. You know, as Liz mentioned, you know, awareness is the first step. But, you know, once you're aware of where you are, you have to take action. And so my advice is always take action, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, you know, how much we tell anyone, you know, we can tell you, give you the best advice. But if you don't take the necessary steps and the actions that you need to take so that you can be a better person, whether we're talking about financial, I know we're talking about money, but we're in any area of your life, you have to take the necessary steps. You know, you have to take action. And so, you know, if it's fear or whatever it is, acknowledge it, understand where you are, and take action. Whatever you need to do to do better, do it.
Love it. Love it. Carrie, any words from you? I hate to put people on the spot, you see, but here's the thing. If you're not going to jump in, then I'm going to come get you.
Yeah, I'll connect what Delisha was just saying with Rebecca's question. She put in the chat, and she mentions how money and power are so connected. And then she's going through this process now where she lost her job, and she is in the tough situation of finding her next job. And Rebecca, for me, that just is such a vulnerable period. You're not, you know, I know for me, when I've been in those periods, it's not when I have felt my most powerful at all and really subject to like outside forces. And so a couple of things I just wanted to offer there is, yes, I 100% agree that money and power are so closely tied together, and our relationship with both, I feel like, are very similar. That whatever our relationship is with power, a lot of times that's a very similar relationship we have with money. And if you haven't read this book, it might be a great book for you to connect with right now, which is Sacred Success by Barbara Stanny. She's now Barbara Huson, Huson. But her book is all about, she's a big writer about money, women and money. Once she got to this book, she started to write about how sometimes it's not really our relationship with money that's the issue, the challenge, it's our relationship with power. And then
I love that you said that, because it comes back to our perspective, right? Mm-hmm. So if I said, so I want to say two things. Rebecca, thank you for sharing, and we're going to touch on this more and more and more, because I had, as a coach, I had somebody approach me this past week saying, hey, I need advice. I've lost my job. I'm in my 40s. I'm having to jump back in there into the hunting role. But I'm running into millennials and I feel so inadequate and that I don't know enough and I'm not too slow, right? So my take on that is always, it's how you see the world is how it is, right? So if you're going to see yourself as not competitive, then you are right, okay? 2, if you shifted the perspective into millennials are looking to my generation for guidance, and I have the experience to talk to that and say, listen, been there, done that, years how we've been in and years we go. So it's just changing the perspective and changing your role. Instead of being the hunter for the next gig, is what is the thrill me? Because if you plug into the thrill and the bliss of what you love, then nobody can stop you. You don't want to get, okay? But to do this exercise, we throw, because we're talking about the association, right? What our relationship is with power and money. So if I throw this word out and I say money, we'll say bills, mortgage, the car payment. So if you're going to think in terms of money as that, that means money serves the purpose for that, which means I work to live. So already there, it should get your attention. And I work to thrive, to flourish. I work for abundance and opulence and the richness that life has to offer, because really that's what money is. It's the manifestation, right, of your dreams, because it allows you, it's a path, it's a way, it's a resource, a tool to get you to the bliss of your dreams, right? So throwing that out there, what comes up for you ladies when we talk about that? Little exercises like that, right? So if I say somebody, I think Dawn mentioned her dad was an amazing entrepreneur. So she grows up seeing this person who's empowered, who goes out there and gets it, and she sees what success looks like, right? So already her relationship might be different with money than, let's say, somebody who grows up in the West and mom's got 3 jobs, etc., etc. So it being what it was, we're here now. How do we shift that perspective? What can I do in my alone time to shift that relationship?
I love the gift and strengths conversations. You know, before all this started, we were talking about Peter Block, and that's one of the things he loves to do is go into gifts and strengths. And even when it comes to money, there's gifts and strengths. And that's why one of the tools that we use is archetypes, which is just money personalities, right? Or whether it's an Enneagram or whatever. You have to start where you are and go with your intrinsic, organic, natural talents. And the thing is every organic, natural talent has the ability to be abundant. Really do. It's just the story that we may have created on top of that that's put a mindset or a blinder on the front of us that allows us to see the obstacles that are in front of us. And what we do in something to help move around that is not only go into the strengths, also look from the future. In 2025, what is it I've created for myself? What the money is for? What is it I've created for myself? And I can look backwards to today and say everything I've learned by what I've overcome in these 5 years. But also, I no longer have obstacles when I'm looking from the future to the present moment and say, this is what I've accomplished. So let's say we're having an IPP reunion in 5 years from now. And I'm like, Sarah, let me tell you everything that has occurred, you know, in the last 5 years. And the thing is this helps people get to what's the money for, that magic wand question. And some people can't go to the magic wand. You know, if you give them a magic wand and say, what are you creating? But what they can do is they can say, in 5 years from now, I will have done this. And this is what it's done for my life and my family and my community and everything else. And looking from the future to the present moment, we don't see obstacles. But when we look from the present moment forward, all we see is obstacles, because that's the mindset we're looking through, and which of course sees all the blinders along the way because we still have those goggles on.
Right, right.
So that's one tool that helps in a way, is really defining what's the money for, but doing it in a visioning exercise.
So is with Fifth Third in her role at Fifth Third, and in terms of the education that she does. But I also know I fell in love with Delisha when she told me about her ideas behind her second gig, which hasn't started up yet, but it's happening as we speak. Or I might be wrong, Delisha. Divine Leadership 365.
Yes.
And I love the word divine because this is this is my personal mission in life, is to speak from a place of strength and richness. And it's not saying that history didn't happen, but it's my divine right. It is my divine right to thrive in whatever space brings me bliss. And so, Delisha, when someone's not in that space, and you've had hands-on experience with folks in the depth of struggle, right? And money is a big player in that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you tell folks to get that shift done in their minds in terms of their relationship or how they see money?
Well, I think, again, it goes back to, being willing to acknowledge where you are, and once you acknowledge where you are, being willing to take the necessary steps. When you talk about transformation, it comes from within, it comes from within yourself. So, we can give you the tools, but you have to acknowledge your thoughts, first of all, because our mind is very powerful, and so you have to be able to understand your thoughts about money, why you think what you think, your values, your beliefs, all of that drive our actions. And so you have to deal with that thing. You have to deal with it. You have to deal with the emotional side of it. How do I feel about money? What are those triggers as it relates to money? And so when you're doing that with those things, I think it becomes easier for you to, what I need to do, more willing to take those action steps. But if you're not willing to deal with your thoughts about money or, take the necessary actions, you're not going to get, you're not going to transform, and that's just with anything. So for me, in these classes, when we, are educating them on the basics, and for me, money is not complex. It's really about the basics, your budgeting, your savings, it doesn't have to be complex. You start with the basics, know where you are. If you don't have a ton to save what you can, and so it to me, it becomes a simple dialogue of, just where are you? And let's start with where you are and deal with those things that might be barriers to you accomplishing financial freedom or financial success.
Love that. Amen.
Carrie, does that tie in a little bit into the idea of imperfect action?
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah,
that sounds good.
Yeah, that is definitely about imperfect action, and that's one of my, I think, core values is imperfect action. I'm a recovering perfectionist, and it's something I have to remind myself a lot about is, and I think when it comes to our relationship with money, we're afraid to do the wrong thing. We're afraid that we're going to take action and do something, we're going to screw it up somehow. And so we might not take action at all, or again, abdicate it to somebody else to take care of for us. So we can only create change in our life through imperfect action.
So I've got a question or something that I can relate that to. So I don't work out like at all. I used to, back like 3 years ago, did hot yoga for a while, and I just loved the act of doing it. So it wasn't for any lofty reasons for health or anything like that. But with us being, I say us, so it makes me feel better. With us being so sedentary during this lockdown, I knew my body did step up and said, holler, We can't keep sitting. And so I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go walking, but that's as much as you're going to get out of me. How much am I supposed to walk to be sitting out? So I Google, it says 10,000 steps a day. I'm like, that's it. You're getting the bare minimum from me just to keep the balance. And I started walking, right? So day 1, check. Day 2 happened. Day 3 didn't happen. Day 4 didn't happen. And then I felt guilty about the cake. Then I started again. So my point being is I'm 2 months in, and for the last 30 days, I've hit my 10,000 steps in a row. And I look at that picture and I go me, right? I show this to somebody who works out 2 hours a day or whatever at 5 a.m. and they might chuckle. It's like, oh, that's cute. You walked 10,000 steps today. But that one little action, right, is what I think we're talking about here. And Delisha, you mentioned go and do something. Just one little thing. And don't put the bar so far up there that you know you're going to fail. It's a doable action. What would you say to that?
Yes, no, I definitely agree. You have to start where you are, take, realistic steps. I feel like a lot of times we see the whole picture. We know, the target, we know where we want to go. And then we just try to jump right in all at once. No, you have to take it in small chunks. You know what I mean? Like, take it in small chunks wherever you are, start small.
I'd like to say it's about balance in a way too, because 25 years in the financial services industry, all on the brokerage or investment advisory side, I have seen a lot of people, I've seen people with $10 million and not be happy. And they feel like they need more. And I've seen people with $100,000 and they retired and they are so happy. So is it the measurement of success? It's about both. It's about a yes and. So my partner in Shimula, was living life, all the experiences, and had to file bankruptcy, right? Whereas I was doing everything right, putting 20% in my 401k, saving all this money, etc. Had kids, life was happening. I was traveling, 50, 60, 70% of the time. And I woke up one day and I forgot what the money was for. Just like you were saying earlier, Ida. I was so busy about the destination of money that I had forgotten about the journey. And that is when, trouble happens. It's about a yes and conversation. So there's a lot of people that need to start on the logical side. They've got the experiential side. And there's some people that have the experiential side down really well. And they need to think about, the logical side. If I had continued down that path, I may have had millions and millions and millions of dollars. But I would have lost everything.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the polarity of it, right? It's
That's
making
a good point.
Right. It's the making of, if money is the goal, then you're already starting out wrong, right? But if money serves the purpose for you to reach that dream, whether it's a remodel of the kitchen a year from now, right? Then it's a different kind of conversation, a different kind of mindset. I'd like to move the conversation a little bit into the workplace, right, for women. So for the last 3 years, I've done talent acquisition into the financial industry. I still do. When they said diversity and inclusion became this hot little number in workspaces about 4 or 5 years ago, right? Go and find us diversity and inclusion. I'm like, we don't have a problem with diversity, people. There's diversity abound. It is the inclusion part. So that's another topic. But my point being, with women in particular, when I spoke to women who just fit my ideal candidate profile, they were just rock stars, check, check, check. They were competitive in nature. They were not because they were competing outside of themselves, they were competing with themselves, right? They're intrinsically motivated to beat their personal best, those kind of women. And you all know who I'm talking about. So when I would meet them, I mean, just amazing stuff, but the conversation would fall flat when I spoke to career changers, folks who came from outside of the industry into the financial industry. There is that shift that needs to happen in the finances, and they would fall short because one, the support wasn't there to help the shift happen adequately, but two, it was the lack of trust within themselves. And again, it's a two-sided coin, right? I can say that the outside world isn't making it really easy for me to make this shift, or on the other side of the flip side of the coin, it's like, what is stopping me up here? When that list of check boxes are ticked, it says I'm it. That I've got an 80-90% chance of success if I make this jump, and yet I'm stopping myself. Why is that? And it's usually around this whole money topic. So in the workspaces, where else have you seen? And Sarah, this question's for you too. You've been doing this as well in the professional spaces, right? Where have you as a woman experienced personally where those bumps are with money for you? And just generally, what do you see come up in those spaces that gets in the way?
So something I've noticed with myself and other women as well, we devalue ourselves. We don't really know our worth. So when we, if we're selling our services as an entrepreneur, or if we're applying for a job or negotiating a salary, we tend to just be okay with what they offer. We may negotiate a little bit, but for the most part, we're like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. I'll start. When do I start? And then when it comes to time for that next, that next year, your next raise, we're usually content whatever they give us, or, we're not aggressive about going after promotions. We're not aggressive about asking for more money. So that accumulates year after year after year. Whereas men, they're aggressive from the very beginning. They negotiate that salary at the very beginning. So they're already at a higher level. Then when it comes time for that first raise, that next promotion, they're aggressive about it. They're not as scared to ask for it. So not only does that leads to this just discrepancy that keeps growing and growing. And then when you get to retirement, you have less money saved because you haven't earned as much. You haven't paid as much into your retirement. You haven't paid as much into Social Security. So when you retire as a woman, you have less retirement income than men do. So it's just like a continuous journey for women. And so that's why we need to really and I'll let everyone else speak to this because this is something I'm still learning about as well, but we just need to know who we are and our worth, and know that we're worth asking for more. So what do you guys think about that, and how we can change that narrative?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you said. It's about the power of the voice, and that power of your voice and utilizing it and speaking up, it comes from inside of us. And I feel like once we, understand that we are valuable, then we can start to use our voice and speak up and negotiate those salaries like we should, because we deserve it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll add to that it just makes me think about our title for this conversation, Money is a Taboo, and changing the narrative. And it made me think, Sarah, that one of the taboos about money is we don't talk about money. So when we're not talking about money in all the ways that we might be able to, but we're just not used to doing it. So in the workplace, exactly what you're talking about, the process Rebecca's in, it makes me think of this, that just talking about money is changing the narrative. And so being courageous to talk about, I'll give a caveat to this too, but being courageous to talk about money in ways you haven't before, with people you haven't before. Go to the guy that works the similar position and see if he's willing to share something about how much he makes, or all the ways that we can just start building our conversations around money. And the caveat I'll have for that is I have also found in kind of my own path and involving my relationship with money, is that money is one of those tender topics that not, who says this? Maybe Brene Brown talks about this, I'm not sure, but somebody wise out there has said, not everybody can be trusted with what I'll call your tender topics. And so finding the people that you feel like you can trust with certain ways of talking about money. You know, you're not going to talk about money the same with everybody. So given that caveat, yeah, I just encourage us to start step by step, like Delisha said, the baby steps, taking the baby steps to just start talking about money in our life more and more.
Thank you
Amen.
for mentioning that. It is so key. I listened to a TED talk yesterday which spoke to, if we went at the pace we've been going at in terms of the payment gap between genders, we would be closing the payment gap or the income gap between genders in 2051. Yeah, I don't want to have to wait that long, right? And so her suggestion was the sooner we get to start talking, speaking up, having those conversations, the more we can have our presence felt. And the sooner that gap will close, right? And it's because, to your point, that we are just so thankful for being tolerated as opposed to being appreciated. I mean, that makes me chuckle because it's so true. We are just so thankful for giving me the opportunity, and I will prove my worth to you before I can ask for that extra dollar. Enough, right? Well, who doesn't want to get mad at that? I do. I was like, no. Now I have a 13-year-old daughter. If she stepped into this world tomorrow, this world's not ready for her. What does that mean? It's my job. It's my job to speak up now so that she doesn't have to. So it becomes a no-brainer when they step out there. What are your thoughts on that, people?
One of the things I want to bring in, this is Judd. I do want to pull us back into that question about, since this is Boardroom Buddhas, the question about spirituality and money, or the issues of attachment. Also, and Carrie, I know I really appreciated your reflection on the sacred use of money. I do think there are issues related to attachment and money, especially in our consumeristic culture, and the value of what we do with our money. That is also, kind of part of the dialogue. Carrie, can you share more what you mean by the kind of sacred use of money and how we do relate that to our spirituality?
Yes. So I have, and just even in my own relationship, particularly in my own relationship with money, and it changing that and evolving that, I have just, like somebody said earlier, started with understanding about what is my relationship with money, what are the stories, and if we threw out the word money and you brainstormed a list of 5 words or 5 descriptions about it, I bet the big majority of those would have a negative connotation. And so we have this kind of general cultural narrative about money that it is something negative, or people who have it, they're something negative about them. And so that, to me, and when I was young, as probably many people who, the religious messages I got about money were, you can't get into heaven. A rich man can't get into, it's more likely for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. And so, that's like ingrained in me. And so it's really hard when you have those messages from a very early age to release those and believe that money actually can be a positive force for good in the world. But I've kind of done my own work on that and help support other people that are doing their work. And now I really work to continue to embrace money with what I call a sacred tool, that just like a hammer can be used for many different things. It can be used for harm. It can be used to build houses for the homeless. It can be used to put an addition on your home for your loved one to move in with you. There are all kinds of wonderful things that a hammer can be used for. It can also be used for harm. And so how we use that tool in a thoughtful and conscious way really is what I try to bring to how we use money and how I use money in my life. Again, imperfect action. It's not perfect, but it's still trying to come back to the thoughtfulness of it.
Money is a pathway to allowing things to happen. And one of the conversations I had in a class once after Notre Dame burnt down in Paris, And we said, okay. And it was all about, money and your relationship with money and the emotions that came up around money. And I said, okay. And I said, it burnt down. And anybody have any thoughts? And they talked about it. And I said, okay. Now, they were able to raise, what was it, $3 trillion in 2.5 days to rebuild it? Something crazy. I don't have the exact number. I said, and I just stated the fact, whatever the number was. And I said they were able to do this in 3 days. And then we said, now let's talk about that. And half the people are like mad, really mad. Like there's people that have that money and they could write checks, and that came from 4 or 5 people and they had the money to rebuild that. And like, how can that be that 4 people have that much money? And then the other side was, oh my God, they have the ability to rebuild the church, right? So it was a really interesting conversations. And then we also transitioned to it to say, now that that is the conversation, we have these 3 churches in America that are African-American religions and churches, and they burned down and there's not enough money. But now, because of the Notre Dame burning down, it brought awareness to this. And now they have the money as well to rebuild. But it's a really interesting conversation. And it's also talked a lot in Jacob Needleman's book, Your Life and the Value of Money. It was from the 60s. And he's like, people have an inner dialogue between their spirituality and their worthiness of money. And they don't always agree. And it's a conversation we all have to have at least, 2 or 3 times in our life and decide what that looks like. I've seen people clean their money and how they spend it, which was kind of like what you were talking and alluding to, whether it's how you spend it or how you invest it. And there's lots of beautiful different ways that spirituality and money can kind of come together for creation and curiosity as well.
Could I speak, Ida?
Yes, I was just going to say, can we throw it open to whoever else is on Zoom? So if you have a question or comment, jump on in, please.
So exciting.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Melanie. I guess what I was thinking about too about spirituality and money, my Rabbi Schlossberg at AJ Adith Jashern has no problem asking people for money. He's like, it's not your money, it's God's money. And he's always telling us things to send in a check for. And this was new to me because I grew up in a family that wasn't necessarily, writing checks all the time. Like I grew up Protestant, I converted later to Judaism. So like, to me, this was very new. And I was like, oh, this is a central tenet, is like, we're giving back. And the other tenet that he talks about is like, it doesn't matter how much you have, you give back something. And we can give our labor, like if we don't make a lot of money, but just that being open to receive and then being open to give, right? And being that open spiritual conduit to money and whatever. Tosha Silver, are you all familiar with her? Like that really kind of changed my attitude when I read her book about just being open to receive the money and quit worrying so much about it. Because it seemed like when I worried about it, it just added so much stress, and it wasn't good. And then I had a weird relationship with my labor that earned the money. Like it was just strange. But it's definitely all this cultural stuff that we mentioned earlier about our country. If we go to Judd's Enneagram stuff, being a 3 and how we present ourselves with money and our success just really influences as a culture. And it's kind of hard to figure out how we feel about ourselves in that culture. So thank you all for sharing the really great things that you shared. The only other thing that I have this year was I read a book called The Art of Money by Barry Tessler, and it's a really kind of spiritual book about money. And she has you do a little ritual, and because I got freaked out at the beginning of the pandemic. I'm like, am I going to lose my job? Is my husband not going to have enough money? Like, what's going to happen? And I realized I needed to sit down and put my money and just look and see what was happening to it. Like I was in denial. So the secret for her that she told me was take a piece of dark chocolate. So on Sunday mornings, I get a piece of dark chocolate and I do have a money date with myself, and I look at the finances, and it's helpful.
I love that so much.
Oh,
That's excellent.
Yeah. The only thing that I was going to just add about the whole concept of spirituality and money is that I believe that, you know, you have to be willing to address some of the misconceptions or misinterpretations around spirituality and money. So, like, you know, I hear people in the Christian faith, you know, the love of money is the root of all evil. And so we're so quick to, you know, quote these passages, but and we take them at surface value. So you have to think about, you know, why did God say that? What was the real meaning behind it? It wasn't that he didn't want us to like money or have money. It was because of you know, your heart can cause you to do evil things when you love money, you know what I mean? And you're being driven by that force. So I just think, you know, when it comes to spirituality, just being willing to know why you believe what you believe. And if somebody is telling you something, you know, being willing to do the research or the background to understand, is this really what is meant by that? And being willing to address it or change your mindset as it relates to that.
Love that. And I want to stick around this whole spirituality and money corner just for a little while longer, because we know there's a lot of taboo in that space. To Judd's point earlier, it's very, very pertinent. But if one is in a situation, let's say I've lost my job, I have to gather all my nuts and make sure that will be good for the winter until I can get into my next gig kind of place, it's great. So I'm not always able to give as I could before, perhaps. But understanding where you are and appreciating where you are and is beautiful. It's perfect. It's as it should be before one can move into any kind of direction. But in terms of the flow of money through your world, of that energy moving through your world, you cannot receive what you cannot give, right? So to be able to receive love, I need to be able to give love. If to be able to receive money and the abundance that the world has to offer, I need to make myself available to it by giving it away, right? So going on that precept, time. One of the first conversations I have with a candidate that wants to do a career change into the financial industry, I say to them, okay, I'm going to pretend to be your financial advisor. What is your greatest asset? First question I ask them. And I go, oh, my house, my car, maybe, my retirement fund. And I'll go, nope. It is your ability to earn an income. If that stops, everything else stops. So let's talk about that. Okay, so your ability to earn an income is your time, your energy, and where you focus that energy. So if you don't have the tithings to give to your church that Sunday, give your time. Focus your energy in a direction that puts you in a giving space, right? Because that is the whole karma thing. So, and it works with everything, including money. What are your thoughts on that, ladies? Anyone really?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Ida. And, you know, I also tell people, you know, around your time is your talent too. So what can you do? You know, what is it? What talent can you bring? If you don't have the financial resources, you know, you don't have the time, you know, just figure out what you can do, what you can offer in terms of your talent.
Love that. Because if you do what you love, everything else follows. We've heard this before, Follow Your Bliss, right? By Joseph Campbell. It's if I can't give you $10 to the guy sitting on the corner of the street, I can give you a ride to where you can have the opportunity to get it. So there's also that part of one's relationship with money that we've got to pull it away from the dollar sign, the worth of money, the value. It's not the value of money, it is the value of you and all of you and what you can bring to the table, right? So in terms of your time, your energy and your talent, to Delicia's point, thank you. That in and of itself is your wealth. And through that is where you start building the money stuff. Any thoughts on that?
I wanted to add, it's kind of connected to that, but it's really circling back around to Judd's question. And one of the keywords I heard you use, Judd, was attachment, related to Buddhism. And it's definitely something that I've thought about, like in our relationship with money, where does attachment come into play, and where do I need to be aware of that, and where is it negative or whatever. So one thought I have is, I think a lot, yes, our culture, our society is very like consumer focused, money focused in a certain way. And generally it's hard to it's hard to not get caught up in the momentum of that in kind of our day-to-day relationship with money. And also I have found that just in my own relationship with money, and then also women that I've worked with and men that I've worked with who are really kind of into prioritizing, so they have strong values around social justice, around spirituality, and some of these other things that might be tied to that. They, I would say, are not attached enough to money in certain ways, because they haven't found a way to feel positive about that connection with money, that engagement with money. And so it's like this extreme non-attachment that is not necessarily a healthy thing either. And it might not be, I might not then be using that word attachment in its truest form as Buddhists would use it. But, for me, there's that dynamic as well. Like, okay, women, yeah, we actually need to be more attached to money in certain ways. And that's a positive, very healthy thing. And in 2020, as we move into our future, it is more and more important for women of all backgrounds to engage in healthy ways in their money life, so that we can help direct the future that we want to see. So there is something there to our relationship with attachment and money. And also the other thought I wanted to offer is just something about fear and love. Like the kind of the other thought about our attachment in our relationship with money is, what are we attached to? Is it something that's very fear-based? And, because we're trying to get more, in that, usually getting more is scarcity focused, and that is fear-based. And or can we shift in some ways where we are engaging or feeling about our money in a way, having a relationship with our money that is more an energy of fear, and can we shift it in ways that really bring more an energy of love? And that, we could have a whole conversation about that. I'll leave that there, but that was just the other lens I thought to offer in that question you posed.
I love that. That's fantastic. And it brings up something that I love. I love working with archetypes, because I think, or the Enneagram, any of those, because you have unique gifts and talents as a starting point, right? So one of my archetypes is a nurturer. I am a server of, I'm like a divine mother. I want to be a mother to all. I'm also a 9 on the Enneagram. Ida, you know that, right? So I'm a 9 on the Enneagram as well.
Carrie's a 9 too, by the way.
Oh, good.
As well as Sarah. You got a lot of 9 sitting in you.
We're really not only about creating peace, but also community, right? Yeah. So it's interesting to see this rise of more collective and collaboration, right? And it doesn't have to be this codependent strategy. It can be more of a collaborative and an interdependent strategy, whether it's the economy, whether it's design, and bringing this feminine approach to leadership forward, which is what's really amazing about what's going on right now. But it's also playing into the archetypes, because, I mean, I have the nurturer, I have the connector, which is about building relationships, and I have the romantic who loves to live life to its fullest and feel and express everything. But I also have a really strong accumulator, because I was not only raised that way, but I was trained that way in the financial industry. And together they make a really awesome team. They really do. And it's just one of those things that when we can observe this as a silent witness in a way, and observe this and see the different personalities and then say, I'm curious how these can work together. Then we have some real power, not only in what we make, but also in like how we let it flow through to us to provide for the community. And there was something really brilliant. It's not meant to be said. It escaped me.
Oh
I
no,
wanted
no,
to
it's
jump in.
Oh no. Oh, Liz.
It
It'll
was
come
like,
back to you.
go ahead,
Yeah,
Jed.
I wanted to jump in, Liz, responding off of Carrie. I do think the issue of attachment is important, and I think the language we're looking for is there's a difference between being unattached and being detached, and I think that's the Buddhist concept that if you're unattached, that's actually can be a form of attachment. In other words, excuse me, detached. Like I am actively letting it go or shaming it or pushing it away. The Buddhist concept is unattached. And so I think our relationship to money can talk about the spiritual issues that are more important, which I do think are attachment, fear, security. And my hunch is that the soul, money's a hard one to do spiritual practice with. I think it can point out really well where we're afraid and what we attach to out of the need for security, and those are spiritual elements. And I think the soul wants us to be in a right relationship with money. So to not make money the focus of our spiritual practice, but to make our soul the focus of our spiritual practice, and then our relationship with money comes into harmony as our soul lives out what it wants. So it has some relationship to money, but our soul really knows what's more important than money. And so I think using the word detached and unattached is important in that conversation.
Thank you. I knew there was probably a distinction that I didn't know how to articulate. Thanks, Jed. I'll add to that I've read articles about how women, to forgive me for, I'm going to generalize here, but generally women bring purpose naturally to their money goals. That generally women are not interested in coming, like I read this in like Financial Advisor, I think articles too, they talk about this, that women don't really want to come into your office a lot of times and as a financial advisor and talk about you're hitting it big, oh the performance has been great and your account just keeps growing. Like fine, but that's really not why they're there. A lot of times women naturally focus on the story of the why and the purpose of money in their life and how they can have positive effect in the world. So just, again, talking about women and money, and like I think that's a strength that we can lead with and continue to like influence the world with, is that a lot of us are drawn to why we want money in our life, why we want to generate money in our life. And then the challenge is to the spiritual challenge, I think of that is like you talked about this, Liz, from a personal experience of the challenge is not to get thrown out too far the other way, but to stay anchored into the purpose and the balance of it.
Yeah.
That's a hot spot, by the way, Carrie. Liz, I'm going to let you go next, but I want to come back to what Carrie just talked about in terms of how our workspaces are built around the carrot and the stick concept, where there are commission goals and targets and financial metrics that is hanging ahead of us. So we end up doing the work to get to that goal instead of doing the work for the sake of the work. So instead of growing families and making sure that we are safeguarded in terms of life insurance and disability insurance, and because it is such a it's important work, right, to help guide a family through a financial plan to get their dreams fulfilled. But because that has been shifted into if I do 10 policies, I'm going to get 5,000 bonus. I'm chasing the money now instead of doing the work for the love of the why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I'm going to stop there, but Liz, go ahead, jump in.
So to kind of circle back and Carrie, you started this conversation in my head, and it was so eloquent up there. Part of it is for me, when I worked for a corporation, it was really easy to earn my money and serve. I could serve on the outside, and my needs were met very easily. And then when I went out on my own, I had that internal struggle of like, how do I meet my needs and charge and still meet the needs of so many people that need help? So that was an internal dilemma where I had to go to another level of spirituality and money conversation in my own head. And I had to get curious and creative. So what I ended up doing, because it's so important to me to help the masses, is I have this sliding scale in a way. Here's your minimum of entry. Let's say it's $49. So $49 to $200. So pay what you can in this area. And then at the end, if you can level up if you want. If not, no big deal. And then of course I also allow scholarships, because I think everybody needs to have access to the conversations and having the conversations and stuff like that. But one of the things that was also really powerful is people have come back in the end and said, it's all relative. I can afford $1,000 for that. Let me give you $1,000. So somehow it was really interesting, allowing access and meeting the need for me to feel like I had to serve. Money came in other ways and closed the gap. And I was like, oh, okay, that's fantastic. Thank you. And it was based on relativity at that point.
Delisha, did you want to jump on in?
I think Dawn had a comment earlier.
Yeah.
All right,
Go,
Delisha.
Dawn. Yeah.
Yeah, it was more related to the previous conversation about spirituality, so not about the career side of things. So so it might take us backwards as opposed to moving forward, but I'm happy to say it if you guys don't mind. I was thinking about this notion though, what you were talking about with spirituality and purpose. And it seems as if we don't often spend time, and I don't care if it's a man or a woman, about what's our purpose. Like, what is the thing that drives us? What is that thing that calls us forward? And in listening to some of the conversation, I'm hearing words like, like I want to nurture people. I want to be like a mom to people. I want to take care of people. And, that is so not in my vocabulary. That is not what I'm driven to do. Right. But I'm clear on my purpose. And when I live inside my purpose, the money shows up. And then I can give money to lots of different things but for those people who love to nurture and be mothers or to like shepherd things, when they have jobs that allow them to live in that spirit, then the money does show up. Or like when Melanie was saying, they have no problem asking for the money. It's like, well, this is important. Go get the money for it. Right? These things are important. Let's go get the money for it because it's coming from our purpose. And sometimes I just wish we had a way for people to really sit and work on that, because then we would actually, maybe we could invent new things in our jobs that would allow us to also express that piece of it. Right? So we don't have to start small or big or where am I on the scale of things, but it's, man, I love what I do and the money shows up. Whether you like Mother Teresa or not, she was able to move millions of dollars around, right? Not everybody liked what she did with the money, but she did because she lived inside her purpose and she was always taken care of. So that's the thing for me, is when it comes to that spiritual side of it, it's because we have lost touch and we don't honor our purpose. And the world is really designed around scarcity at this point in time. And I think that's really where the opportunity is to kind of recognize that and take some steps to make that happen. So that's right. That's what I was getting ready to say.
Yes, thank you. Beautiful.
Yeah,
Delisha, I think Delisha had a note earlier, Sarah.
yes.
I was saying, a lot of times, I come across women who feel like they have to make the choice between passion or pay. Well, should I go after my passion or should I go after a job that, I really get paid a lot for? And it's like, no, go after both. You know what I mean? Like, you
Yes.
know, find something that you like, it will come. I believe that when you do what you're paid, will come. So
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
was what I wanted to add.
Thank you. Very, very true. Very true. And if there isn't a space for it in your 9 to 5 gig, then make space for it. Like Dawn said, you know,
Exactly.
slice out the time in your world to follow that passionate thing for you. And before you know it, what you think might be a pastime or a hobby that you just love doing will shift into a money generating stream of income. Who knows? You don't. But you've got to stay true. It's the alignment of your heart, mind, and body, right? It's the stepping into all these parts of who you are. Yeah.
So
We've got literally like maybe 10 minutes to still ask questions and do this before we need to look at our closing remarks. I'm going to throw the floor open. Go ahead.
I was going to say that, so one of the things that has helped me the most is, you know, just doing that own personal work, you know, learning about my personality type through the Enneagram and then relating that to money, and then also doing coaching around what my true values are. So ladies, what are some tools and actions that we can take to get more in tune with ourselves around money? And what, you know, like what are our values around money? What is the purpose of money in our lives? And how do we get more confident around that?
There's so many tools that you can use to do that. But one of my favorite is non-judgmental way of doing it. Like we do a money personality quiz, and you can be like, so for example, the alchemist is a person whose mission is here to transform the world. You know, big stuff, right? They have really big ideas, but they're also the most judgmental when it comes to money, and they're the quickest to judge how you spend yours, right? But they have this love-hate relationship because they need money to transform the world at this day and age where we are, right? So there's these 8 different personality types, and they're tried and true, and it's probably one of my favorites because you can go, oh, that's it. It's not me. It's that thing. It's the, you know, accumulator who is so afraid of becoming dependent upon somebody else that's acting right now out of fear. And it allows me to kind of stop me in my tracks sometimes. Because I know sometimes personally when I start on some of the internal journeys, compassion for myself is not the thing I have most. And when I can do it in a way with a tool that is not to be used as a tool against me, that's when I find it most beneficial. I don't know if anyone else has had that, but I have.
Love it. I'm going to ask Delisha, do you have any closing remarks, sharing a tool with us? What can we, something that we did today? Yeah, just to take away.
So I think I don't. What I'll say is this. I think there's 2 tools I'll offer. I think they're tools anyway. The first is introspection. I think that's the best tool that you have within yourself, you know. So thinking about everything that we've talked about today, our values, our beliefs, our thoughts about money, our fears, all of that. Understand where you are in that process. Understand, you know, what your thoughts are about money, and challenge yourself to begin to try to transform your mindset as it relates to some of those things. After you do that, I would say, because, you know, I work at Fifth Third, and this is what we do. We provide education courses. So you can take a class, you can learn the basics of financial education, or even if it's not basics, but, you know, get some education on, you know, personal finance. So that's something that can help you. And then in that, you will get many tools, how to look at your credit report, how to create a budget, how to, you know, invest. So that's what I would offer up.
Thank you so very much.
I'll add that as far as tools and resources, Barry Tesler, who, I forgot who mentioned Barry Tesler. Was it Thank you, Melanie. Okay, so Barry Tesler's book, The Art of Money, is one of my top 3 books that I recommend. It's not the book for everybody, but for what we're talking about here, it could be a great book to start with. It's very readable, and she's a financial therapist, and if you're wanting to just work on building a more positive relationship with money, she has some really simple workbooky kind of reflection questions built into the book. So it's story and reflection. So that's one tool. Another is the process that's used in The Artist's Way, morning pages, building on Delicia's, reflection recommendation that it could be as simple as like 5 thoughts you have about money, or 5 beliefs you have about money, and then take 1 a day each. Next week, start on Monday with the first one and do morning pages with that. And I think that's super simple, and it can be really powerful in those small steps to make big shifts. And then the last thing I'll add is these days when I started in working with money in 2001, basically, was when I started helping people in their personal financial life. And there were not a lot of resources out there. There were a few books on the shelf. There was maybe Dave Ramsey and maybe Susie Orman, maybe not yet, but there weren't a lot of resources. Now you can go to YouTube, you can go to podcasts, you can go to, of course, to the library, the audiobooks, there's so, and the books. There's so many. Instagram, I like follow all these really cool women on Instagram that are talking about money in all different ways. So I'd say, what's the way that you're being pulled? Like, what's the lowest hanging fruit? What's the way you're being pulled to know more about money or to focus on around money? Is it relationship focused, or is it fact focused? Like, I really want to know how to do something in my money life. Like, take that and then start to look for resources that will help you learn about that. And I think that's an important, good first step.
I love it. Liz, did you have something else you wanted to throw in there?
I think it's beautiful to create more conversations and safe places to have this.
Yes.
It's important to do this, and not that we need to recreate the boys' club for the girls, but we just need to create our own club, whatever that looks like, in a safe environment.
It's coming. It's coming. We're working on it right now. That's the little birdie. But yes, we are creating more opportunities for women to talk about things that really
absolutely.
So yes, thank you. I have a little tip where that I learned a few years ago, and that was to draw $100 cash and put it in my wallet, in my purse, in my back pocket. Y'all know where this is going, right? And just go about my day, window shop, and look at the things that I could buy with that $100. Like, oh, there's a nice shoe. I could, if I wanted to, use the money right here. But I'll wait for something better. And then, keep going on with my day. And that just speaks to how we can do tiny little steps to shift our relationship with money and the value, our ideas of its value, its true value in our world, right? I'm going to stop there. This has been so amazing. Thank you all so very much for taking out the time to talk about these things, because we know it matters. I am going to hand it over to Judd. Judd, do you want to do some closing remarks before we shut down? Ladies, thank you so much. Very much a deep bow to all of you and the work that you are doing in the spaces that you're in. You are so valued and appreciated. We love you, and we are going to be calling on you again, because we need to have more of this right here. Judd?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks again. These have just been really great and beautiful conversations. And to echo, these are I do think there's a difference between men and women, and in some degrees, I mean, these are all these human issues that we all relate to the degree that we identify with masculinity or femininity. One of the things that I've been on the verge of not hoping and hoping in some ways that the financial, I don't hope this, but what if everything crashed? Like, what if this idea of the dollar, what if everything, and all of us were in a similar boat again, would we be okay? Right? If I didn't have my retirement. And those are the spiritual issues of what is really important in our lives, and how do we live those even when we have the things, knowing what's really valuable and important. And in some ways, I think, man, it'd be fun to start over, wouldn't it? Like if we could create another more just system, that would be a hard way to go. So I don't hope that happens. And don't blame me if the stock market crashes. I'm not cursing it. But I think those are the spiritual questions that we all get to journey with, and we may get to journey with more. And I think those are really important. Anyway, just the beautiful wisdom shared here today. Sophia came with all of her power and wisdom, and so thanks so much for being on. And join us again. We do devotionals every morning at 9 o'clock, and we do programs every day at 3 o'clock. Tomorrow we're hosting a program on how to move from talking nice to generative dialogue. How do we create dialogue space around difficult issues? So join us tomorrow at 3 o'clock for that. And then on Friday, our 3 o'clock program is on Enneagram and teenagers, how to parent teenagers based upon Enneagram number, both honoring your path and who you are, but also honoring the path and the soul of your child. And how can we do that in ways that make sense? So come back and join us at IPP. I also want to remind you all that have been joining us, we do have a campaign going on right now, Keep IPP Alive, $18 campaign following the Jewish tradition that gives donations of $18. We're inviting people to sign up to give a monthly donation to keep our program going. So speaking of money, I thought I would add that. Thank you all. Again, you're welcome to unmute yourself and say words of thanks and greetings and blessings to each other. Yeah. Thanks for being on today.
18 being the numeric value for life.
Yes, it means life. 18. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.